While I was going through my... All right.
Are you ready?
Yes. Hi, guys. Welcome to an all-new episode of Convos on the Pedicab. I'm here with a very special guest, former House District 47 State Representative candidate, Jennifer Fleck. Jennifer, she's refusing to wear a mask, but I'm taking it upon myself to wear a mask for her safety, because there's nothing I care more about than protecting Jennifer's well-being and keeping her safe, not just for her, but for her family as well. Anyway, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started becoming an activist, and how did you get involved in politics? Because you're kind of a big deal amongst a lot of conservatives here.
Okay. My name's Jennifer Fleck, and I'm a Texan born and bred. Was born in Denison, same as President Eisenhower, and grew up in Fort Worth, raised my kids in Houston. Now we live here in Austin and Lakeway. I got involved in politics. I didn't know it was politics, but in 2012, some parents came to me. My kids were in private school, but some parents came to me and asked me to help them get a graphic sex ed program out of the middle schools called It's Your Game that was developed here in Austin. And they asked me, I assume because I'm an attorney, and I had kids the same age, but my kids weren't going to be exposed to this program. But anyway, I got involved in that program, got involved in pushing back against that, helping the parents. I took that fight to the legislature in 2013, and I started going into legislators' offices. I had never done that before, and talking to them about the sex ed program.
So Jennifer, not to interrupt you, but Tell us a little bit about the sex ed program, what was in it, and why were you concerned about it?
So I was concerned that it was being taught to 7th and 8th graders and that it was very inappropriate. And so they had video. It was mainly video driven.
Okay.
And they had videos of young adults, not teenagers, not middle schoolers, but videos of young adults in bedrooms, on beds, on couches, half dressed, and propositioning each other for sexual acts. And I thought that was pornographic.
In middle school?
In middle school.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that we should have a better comprehensive sex ed program, and I think that the whole abstinence only thing is not a good look, and I think that can create more teen pregnancies and create more isolation and actually make it harder for people to have healthy, functioning boy-girl relationships. So I think that there needs to be a balance, but you can't go completely in the opposite direction where people are exposed to too much, and too much stuff is considered okay at too early of an age. So what do you think the balance should lie, and when do you think certain things should be taught at these levels?
So there's two terms that everybody needs to know. One term is called comprehensive sex ed, which is bad, and the other term is called sexual risk avoidance, which is good. So sexual risk avoidance programs teach teenagers that all of these things are out there, all of these things are possible, but how can we avoid those risks? So the same theory or the same methodology that we would use with drugs or alcohol, right? We teach kids, these are the drugs, this is what it looks like, these are the consequences. How can we avoid doing drugs?
No, 100%. But, the DARE programs, we got to also face facts. Like the DARE programs in the 1980s and the Nancy Reagan Just Say No didn't exactly work.
So you have to ask yourself, so it's hard because there are a lot of people who think that they're an expert on what kids should know or what kids should be taught. As a parent, I'm an expert for my children. And when you have children, you'll be an expert for your children. I don't want the schools to step in and be an expert. I want to teach my children the way I want to teach them. So for me, in schools, let's stick to reading, writing, arithmetic, and science, which we're not doing very well. As a country, we're lagging behind.
Yeah, we're doing pretty terrible. And there's also financial literacy and all that stuff, too. We're going to talk about that a little more. My only counterpoint to that is that not every parent is going to be involved with their kids' lives. as you are, and these kids should be learning about this stuff in places other than the internet and other than, a Cardi B music video, right, or other than Instagram. So I think that there has to be a balance. I do think, though, that parents should be able to opt in or opt out of the school's sex ed curriculum. So if you as a parent don't like what they're teaching, you should just be able to say, hey, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't want to make a stink with the school board, but I just want to pull my kid out. And if the other kids are going to learn it, hey, so be it. Let them do that. But I think that you as a parent should have agency in terms of whether or not you
and that's the law.
want to involve your kid. That's what I think.
And that's the law, actually. That's Texas law. Parents are supposed to be able to opt their children out. The problem is school districts circumvent parents and circumvent the law, and they don't obey it. And there's no consequence.
How so? If you could explain a little bit.
They teach subjects and they don't let parents know that it's part of the curriculum. They don't give parents notice that it's being taught. And so then parents are allowed to file a grievance because that's breaking the law. The problem is there's no penalty for breaking the law, which is true in a lot of areas in Texas law.
But then the parent could still say, I'm pulling my kid out, right, with no consequences, right?
The lesson's already been taught. The damage has already been done.
Because they don't know, right? I get where you're coming from.
The damage is already done.
Do you know who Jeffrey Miller is?
No.
So Jeffrey Miller is this doctor and this relationship psychologist who writes these comprehensive books and articles about how to have healthy boy-girl relationships.
Okay.
And it's pretty liberal in terms of how they go about doing things, but it also talks about how do you know if a girl is interested in you? What do you do? How do you react to that? How do you react to whether a person's interested in you, a guy's interested in you if you're a girl? How do you if you like someone but you just want things to be casual, how do you communicate that while still having your self-respect? If you're a guy, how do you communicate wanting to have a serious
I hear what you're saying, and I'm not familiar with him. But I never had a problem knowing when a guy was interested in me.
Understandable.
I didn't need an expert to tell me.
Right. But sometimes, sometimes, I think that people should. Not everybody can understand that thoroughly, and sometimes, seeing reading about things from a nuanced, objective perspective can help open your eyes. So I know that when I was, and also look, women are a little bit more mature and a little smart about this stuff than guys are. So I'll put it to you this way: when I was younger, right, if a girl didn't stood me up for a Tinder date or a Bumble date or a OkCupid date or something like that, I would be
Are those
kind of
apps?
Yeah, it is a little bit after your time, right? But or if I met a girl at a bar or something and we were gonna go out and she canceled at the last minute, I'd be really angry and resentful and upset. And then I started reading some things, and then it explained this is what girls have to go through when they're meeting a complete stranger. The fact that you're going out with a complete stranger is one of the scariest things that a woman can do. So instead of being angry, just if you're going out with someone, just appreciate the fact that somebody's actually willing to put their safety on the line and actually meet up with you and spend time with you. And if you're talking to somebody and they don't like you or they don't want to talk to you, the worst that you're dealing with is you're feeling a little bit embarrassed and you feel a little put down and your ego's shot. But if you're a female, some of the things that you might be worried about are a lot worse than your ego being shot down. So I think that sometimes these types of perspective setting things could make you more, make you better about that.
If a guy asked me out on a date and then he didn't show up, I would assume he wasn't the one for me.
100%. Agreed. But look, like I said, not everybody is as healthy and well adjusted as we are. So I think that there are ways to create a sex ed curriculum in which you just create more healthy, happy, and well-adjusted people, which I think we need, especially now in these times of complete isolation and complete division.
Maybe.
So that's my take on it. I think there's got to be a balance.
I agree, but again, we are not for comprehensive sex ed. We are for sexual risk avoidance. So those are the terms.
All right, Jen.
Yes, we can move on.
Well, we are, but one more question.
Yes.
What is comprehensive sex ed for someone who wouldn't understand?
Comprehensive sex ed includes everything in the kitchen sink at all ages, from kindergarten to seniors in high school. They want to teach every kid at every age level everything, and terms and words that even I don't know.
Like drag queen story hour and all that stuff. I think that's horrible.
Is that comprehensive sex? Comprehensive sex ed is I can't even go there.
Talking about transgender stuff or whatnot when you're 9 or 8 or something? Or
it would be do you know what a dental dam is?
It's it's a female condom.
Okay, so it would be teaching that terminology to a 6th grader. I don't think that's appropriate.
No, yeah, I don't think you need to.
That's comprehensive sex ed.
Yeah. But what if they're like juniors in high school or sophomores in high school?
Honestly, I didn't ever hear that term until a few years ago, and I did just fine. So,
all right, hey,
everybody's different.
Fair enough. I just want to hear your perspective on this because I think that there's, you were going to be a government representative, and honestly, I think you should have won, and you should be in your runoff, and we're going to talk about this next. But as a government representative, you're going to be involved in how some of these laws get passed. So the ability to have discussions with people and have them objectively is extremely important for what you were going to do, and that's part of this podcast, Jen.
Yep.
So speaking of which, you had a pretty contentious. So you ran against Justin Berry, who is right now the GOP nominee, and things got a little contentious while you were contesting. And I want you to describe your race, what your platform was, and what you feel like, how you feel you've been treated by the Board of Elections with the outcome and whatnot.
Okay, so the primary was in March. There were 5 of us that ran, and I led the primary by 10 points. And second and third place was separated by 1 vote. So Justin Berry and Don Zimmerman were, Justin Berry beat Don Zimmerman by 1 vote.
Yeah.
So then the runoff should have been in May, but it got delayed until July because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so we campaigned-ish. I mean, in COVID I did some door knocking, but there was a lot of things that we weren't able to do because of COVID. We couldn't have the big gatherings or the big meetings where we could get ourselves more known, whatever. So, but I still did a lot of door knocking. So we went into the runoff. I expected to win, to be honest. I expected to win by a lot. I think I was predicted to be the winner by most people. And in the runoff, Justin won. So the results came in on election night at 8:30. The early vote came in. He was ahead 55-45. And then at about 9:30, half the precincts came in, and he was ahead 55-45. Like the percentage didn't change at all. And then at 1:30 in the morning, the remaining precincts came in, and he was ahead 55-45. No change. So for me, I have a degree in accounting, and I'm a lawyer, but for me, that was statistically improbable that the percentages would not change. So I reached out to some people who happened to have gotten possession of the audit logs for Travis County, the Travis County election. And what the audit logs produced was that our ballots were entered illegally. They were deleted at 11 p.m. at night on election night. All of our ballots were deleted. Some ballots were recreated, and then they were re-entered, which is why we didn't get the final results until 1:30 in the morning. So I'm not saying that I should have won. I guess I did say already that I should have won.
Yeah, you already let that out, Jen.
But the audit log shows that there was so much illegal activity that the outcome is not knowable. And so I did file an election contest, which I'm not pursuing anymore. Because there's no way for me to have resolved that prior to the November election. So right now I spend most of my time, my free time, trying to bring awareness that we don't have legal elections in Travis County, and that the Travis County clerk, Dana Debevois, is an operative. She's a criminal. Criminal charges were referred against her to the AG, and
right, but he's in a little hot water. He's in a little bit of hot water right now too. So
So our AG Paxton has a lot of his own problems right now. Plus, there's a lot of voter fraud happening in Harris County, which is the biggest county in Texas, and so we're just not getting the attention that it deserves in Travis County. But the voters need to know that they need to keep an eye on her, and we may not get a legal election.
So that being said, I really believe that the only way you can ever have meaningful change within your jurisdiction is by organizing locally and being involved and being active and being consistent. And one of the things that the left, especially like the socialists and the progressives, do very well, and probably a lot better than us, at you specifically, right? Because I feel like I'm kind of in the middle and I'm not really either right or left. Is they are better at organizing, and they are better at being involved in a more in sync fashion than people on the right. So how can people who are more on like the true libertarian conservative side, the pro-freedom side of things, get more involved so that we don't have our civil liberties taken away from a property rights standpoint and from a health standpoint and from a point of being able to operate your small business successfully. You know, like that these are big concerns that a lot of people are having. How do we get involved and make our voices heard in a way that's effective? Not just having a few protests at the Capitol where people chant arrest Bill Gates and then they go home, you know?
Right. So until we get legal elections, we can't get representatives that will represent our interests. So that's the first thing we have to fix. We have to fix the election process. And right now it's corrupt in Travis County. So we're not going to get the representatives that we want on city council. We're not going to get the representatives that we want for district attorney. We're going to lose the traffic measure that's on the ballot, where the transportation measure where they're trying to approve the train.
Prop A.
We're going to lose that measure because we don't have legal elections. It's not because the people are going to vote for it. It's because we don't have legal elections. So it's hard for me to answer that question, like how do we organize and where do we spend our time, because right now we don't have legal elections.
So Jen, I went to that conference that I saw you in last week, and this is kind of why you're here, because you were gracious enough to actually agree to sit down and do this with me, which I really appreciate. The fact that you're actually a former state rep candidate, you're a respectable lawyer, you're super involved, you're very well known locally and in the state. For you to even agree to be on a Pedicab shows that you genuinely care about Austin and our culture and the people who actually live here, and that's very admirable and commendable. But you agreed to do this because I ran into you and talked to you about it at this event. And one of the things I heard, there was a doctor, I forgot her name, but she had like a PhD from Stanford or something, and she said, hey, listen, at the next legislative sessions, we need to start doing sit-ins and stay at the Capitol and really put pressure on our elected officials, because even like the progressives have been doing a lot of that stuff, and with the defund APD and all that and whatnot, right? But they've been doing all that stuff, and a lot of the candidates that are in office are not progressive candidates. So I think that there is something to be said about just making your presence felt at the state legislative office while we sort that out, so that our government officials actually feel pressure by the people who elected them to actually do their job.
That's assuming they get elected.
Assuming,
are they
right?
elected or are they selected?
Either way, right? But
right.
Jen,
So no, I hear you. So this session's going to be very difficult because I have heard that they're not going to have any in-person testimony. So everything's going to be virtual. I have heard, and so that's going to be it's going to be difficult to leverage any kind of control or any kind of pressure when the representatives don't have us right in front of them.
So what about sit-ins? That's why we have to do sit-ins, and we have to do something in a way to organize ourselves in an effective manner. Because to be honest, like the quarantines, the forced mask wearing, all that stuff, it goes along with a lot of these liberal progressives too. Because you know that in New York City, 80% of people who got arrested, over 85% actually, of people who got arrested for social distancing violations were people of color. And if you're worried about the police overstepping their boundaries and exercising excessive force and even deadly force,
we as the people, as the people have to decide that we're done.
Agreed.
We're done. So meaning we're not going to wear masks anymore. We're not. We're just not going to do it. But we have to decide. But we also, so many people are operating in fear, and so many people are going to start operating in habit. And so first we have to be convinced that COVID isn't as dangerous as they initially said, or that the narrative or that the media wants us to believe. And so I don't know how I don't know how we change that, except for we just see more and more people get better. So on the news, they always talk about how many people are testing positive. They always talk about how many people are in the hospital, and they always talk about how many people are dead. They never talk about how many people have gotten better. And the truth of the matter is most people who get COVID get better.
Yeah.
And so we don't need to be wearing the masks. That's not preventing the disease. A healthy body prevents you from dying and prevents you from going to the hospital.
I agree, and I think that, like I said, I've said this on numerous other episodes. 94% of people who died from this virus had very serious pre-existing conditions, not just pre-existing conditions, serious pre-existing conditions. Yes,
right.
yes. So this is 100% a call for a lifestyle change, and I think we should be doing stuff to offer. We need to do a better job of giving access to healthy foods in like poor, underfunded communities, and we need to start collaborating with sustainable farms, and we need to, maybe possibly subsidize exercise programs in bad neighborhoods so that people can be incentivized and have the ability to affordably take better care of their bodies. Because, like, look, let's face facts. Somebody in Lake Travis is going to be going to have a much higher ability to access healthy food on a consistent basis than somebody living in Dove Springs. So there's got to be.
But hold on, it doesn't cost anything to go for a run.
It doesn't.
Right? Okay,
it doesn't.
So,
no. I agree.
I just can't play into that narrative that poor people and minorities are more susceptible to COVID. I just don't believe that.
Well, if you're lacking the resources to go to a gym and you're lacking healthy food options, and it's a lot harder for you to afford those things, yeah, you're going to be more susceptible to complications if you have a different type of lifestyle. So I think a little bit of help to increase accessibility to these resources that are good for everyone, I think that would go a long way in terms of slowing the spread of the hospitalizations.
Right.
That's all. I think that's just a smart, common sense thing to do.
I know. I hear you. But going for a walk is free. Going for a run is free. And you can eat healthy on the cheap. You can. You can eat healthy on the cheap.
And there are opportunities. I know that when I do the CSA boxes from JBG.
I don't know what that is.
It's there's a sustainable farm near like Del Valley, and you can order like boxes of veggies for like a week or 2 weeks and whatnot, and it costs me maybe like $45 every 2 weeks or something to just get a bunch of veggies and whatnot that are really like pesticide free, natural, non-processed, no GMOs.
We can grow our own vegetables. For cheap.
I agree, Jennifer. I agree.
That doesn't cost anything.
And I think that if you live in a single family home and you have a yard, that we need to do a better job of teaching people how to do that.
Right. But really, it's just a lie.
Right,
it's
but
really
Jennifer,
just a lie that we've all bought into.
What I'm saying though about JBG, just to like go on about JBG, is that you could if you can't afford the CSA box, you can volunteer at that garden like a couple like once a week or once every few weeks, and they'll just give you a box for just volunteering for like 5 hours to.
There you go.
So we just got to do a better job of communicating these opportunities so people in those areas realize that there's opportunities, because there's another discrepancy. I think that the opportunities exist for everybody, but the problem is that is the realization. Yeah, the problem is the realization of those opportunities. So I think we should do a better job.
I've never heard of that, so it's interesting. Yeah.
There you go. Knowledge, baby. Knowledge, Jen. Let's talk about the defunding APD. Let's talk about that.
Okay, I'm not for that. I'm opposed to defunding the APD. I think that's ridiculous. I think anytime you have an increase in law enforcement, you have a decrease in crime. I live in Lakeway, or I live very near Lakeway, and the road that goes through Lakeway is 30 miles an hour, okay? Which is ridiculous. It's like you could ride a bike almost faster.
I mean, you could. Look at you.
Yeah, but there are police officers on that road pretty much every single day. You can bank on it. Somewhere on that road, there's a police officer. Guess what? Nobody goes over 30. Nobody. Because you're going to get a ticket. And nobody's on their phone because you're going to get a ticket. And so anytime you have an increase in law enforcement, you're going to have a decrease in crime. So I'm opposed to defunding the police. I think that's ridiculous. I think that the way in which they defunded the police was my biggest problem and my biggest concern for two reasons, right? And the first thing is that our small businesses, our bars and our restaurants and our live music venues have been like decimated by our government's decision to shut down these venues. Right.
And not a single, the city said that they're going to cut $170 million from the APD budget and whatever, right? Not a single penny has gone to actually help the businesses that were most affected by the lockdowns. So I think that if they were to have said, hey, listen, we're in an economic emergency, the culture and the lifeblood of our city is really in jeopardy of falling by the wayside. We spend $440 million annually on policing. For this 1 year only, we're cutting the budget to help put it into some of these struggling businesses to preserve our culture. This is temporary. We're going to work on better measures of accountability for your safety and the safety of the community. I think that there would be a lot less of a negative backlash. I'm sure there would be for some people, but I think it would have gone over a lot better.
Yeah.
I also think, Jen, that they cut the wrong programs.
Right. Well, and they're going to keep cutting. They're gonna. I mean, that's the plan. Is they're gonna keep cutting.
I think another problem with the BLM stuff is it's actually done the opposite effect, and it's kind of created like a culture of like bootlicking for these police departments. And like I said earlier, what's going to happen when these police officers start overstepping their boundaries when it comes to enforcing quarantines and mask wearing? So you have to I think when it comes to police accountability, we need police accountability, and it should be up to the conservatives to be the leaders in terms of enforcing clear and actionable police accountability for everybody. Because the way BLM is doing it right now, it's just it's almost like it's creating a communist revolution, and it's destroying small businesses, and it's creating more division and more hostility. And I think that
I agree. I mean,
yeah.
But it's the same thing they did with the homeless. Okay, so what they did with the homeless is I used to actually give money to peddlers. I did, like on the corners or whatever. I did, but now because the city council have relaxed all the laws, and they've made it so that they've allowed the homeless they've empowered the homeless to take over sidewalks and take over street corners. Now I don't give money to peddlers because it's irritated me and frustrated me because they haven't been given boundaries, and now they don't have boundaries. Okay, so the same thing with BLM. Black lives matter. If we take it literally, I do think that that's a problem that needs to be addressed. Police
100%,
accountability
100%.
needs to be addressed. However, the movement has been hijacked, and there are no boundaries to that movement now. And so where I want to care about the root of that, I can't anymore because they've allowed it to have no boundaries. They've allowed it to they've overreached that movement and that saying, and it doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean anymore.
I agree, and there's also a conflicting narrative about how to with regarding COVID, because if you have a 4th of July gathering with your family, you're going to spread the virus. But if everybody's out rioting, all of a sudden that's safe. So that's where there's double speak when it comes to that, and I think that's not doing the movement justice, because I do think that we need a meaningful racial justice movement. We 100% need that, and I think my biggest concern is it's a wealth issue. If you want my honest opinion, from a generational wealth standpoint, this is from the Federal Reserve website, Jennifer.
But it's also a fatherless issue.
Yeah, but let me explain. I get all that stuff. I get all that stuff, right? But just from the Federal Reserve website, Black Americans have 17% of the generational wealth over their lifetimes that white Americans have. And stock market participation, there was a bunch of CNBC articles about that, is below half of
But why is
white
that
people's.
happening? But hold on, why is that happening?
I think financial literacy needs to be taught in the schools, and it needs to be taught in boys and girls clubs, and people need to start.
It might also be though, the degrees that people seek. Okay, so when I meet somebody, and I'm not saying what color they are because that's not the point.
Yeah.
Let's say you go get. I have a niece who's getting a degree in sociology. Okay.
Okay.
You're gonna have a hard time finding a job that makes a lot of money in sociology. That's just the hard truth. Okay, if I have a child or a relative who gets a degree in engineering, or who gets a degree in nursing, even nursing is a great degree, and it's a 2-year degree. People should be getting degrees in nursing.
But Jennifer,
what?
Not to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Not to interrupt you, but these levels of 50% less stock market participation are coincide along with the people making the same income. So if you looked at black nurses and white nurses, the stock market participation amongst black nurses is still lower than of white nurses.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true.
All right, let's say that is true. There should be something that we need to do something to actually improve stock market participation in communities of color, because that's the only way you could really resolve the wealth gap and resolve a lot of this policing stuff is by building generational wealth in a way that's not going to burden the taxpayer. And I think financial education and financial literacy, the more you teach that for everybody on a broad scale, the better your country's going to be. I think
we need to be teaching kids what they need to be getting degrees in.
Yeah, and I think financial literacy is also good no matter what.
That's part of it. That's part of it is how should we be directing young people right now? What kind of jobs are out there? What pays? Well, how can you make money?
Agreed. And I think that even with even if you're a waiter or a bartender, right? If you understood like how to read an income statement, how to read a balance sheet, what a cash flow, free and operating cash flow was, the differences, what a PE ratio is, if you understood those terminologies, you could be taking a percentage of, like, let's say you had a really good night waiting tables, you made $500, right? You know, or it was a busy weekend and you pulled in like over $1,000 or something. You know, you could pull in a third of that instead of buying shoes, or instead of buying clothes, or instead of just going out to dinner. You could be pulling in like a portion of your money and buying call options, or you could be like investing and starting a portfolio.
But that's not a race conversation. That's not a race. That has nothing to do with race, right?
I think that this should be taught, and I think that people in communities where there's no father in the communities and whatnot, like you said, they're probably less likely to understand and process that information than somebody who grew up with two parents in the home. So I think that's my take on that, Jen. That's my take.
I agree. I think part of it is parents need to do a better job, and I think part of it is schools need to do a better job. I mean, our counselors in our schools need to do a better job directing kids to majors that they can make money and they can provide for a family, and that they can be the provider in the home and move up and move into managerial roles where they make more money. I mean, that's not a race conversation, I don't think.
Right, but I don't see anybody being opposed to trying to offer financial education or financial literacy courses in underserved areas. I feel like it can't hurt anybody to do that.
I agree.
Yeah, it can't hurt anybody to do that. And actually, Vicki Goodwin, I did a little op research, even though it's kind of a little moot right now. But she actually co-opted a bill about that. Right. So I was actually pretty stoked on that. But what's your take on Vicki Goodwin? Tell me your thoughts.
So Vicki Goodwin was rated the 7th most liberal Democrat legislator in the House.
Okay.
So she has a lot of bills on climate control, which I think is ridiculous. And she has a lot of bills on gun control.
That's bad.
Which is bad.
That's bad. That's bad.
And she also co-authored or co-sponsored a bill that would have punished. This is my thing. It would have punished counselors who counseled children away from same-sex attraction and away from changing their gender.
Okay, but all right. So I agree with the you should do whatever you can to avoid gender dysphoria. I agree with all that stuff.
We don't punish. Listen to the bill.
All right.
It would punish a counselor who counseled a child away from same-sex attraction and gender transitioning. So we can't punish counselors for that. We can't punish a counselor for doing that. So I'm not for that bill, and I'll never be for that.
Sure, but just now that you brought this up, do you think there's anything wrong with being gay?
No.
Not at all, right? Yeah. Okay.
But I'm not gonna. But a child's brain is very malleable, right? Like our brains don't fully form until we're like 25 or 30 years old.
That's 25.
Okay?
Yes.
So children's brains are very malleable. I'm not for telling a child that they should change their gender ever, and I'm not for encouraging same-sex attraction. Now, if that's your choice, that's fine. But I'm not going to encourage that. I'm not going to promote that. I'm not going to add to that for a child. Once you're 18, we're having a different discussion. But as a child.
Hey, look, I think you like who you like. You should be into whatever you're into. But I don't think it should be influenced and manipulated by a grown-up adult. That's right. That's all right. We're on the same page about that. Yeah. But I wanted to double check. I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
That's what they're gonna attack me on every time. They're gonna say that I'm homophobic and that I'm transphobic. I'm not any of those things. I just don't believe in it being taught in the schools.
Right. Okay. And that's why I'm asking you these tough questions, because I want you to share how you feel, because it should be clarified. I think that, look, I'm a very pro-freedom type of person, and I think that if you're going to vote conservative, look, you got to vote for people that are going to protect your liberties. I think that you're one of those conservatives. There are certain things we disagree on, but as a conservative, you're the type of conservative that I would want to vote for and want to support, just like Shelley Luther. And it's important, and I feel as though because you're a pro-freedom type of conservative, you might get misrepresented and get miscategorized as a result of that. And I think it's important to that type of stuff is important to clear up, so we understand that if somebody votes for Jennifer Fleck, it doesn't mean that you're homophobic or you're transphobic or that you're racist or any of that stuff. And that's got to just be brought to everybody's attention so people understand who they're supporting. That's all. And I also think that I saw this clip a while ago of Van Jones and Owen Schroyer going back and forth, and Van Jones said something very interesting. And the Constitution or America is based on liberty and justice for all, and it's the job of the Democrats to ensure meaningful justice, and it's the job of the Republicans to ensure that people have their liberties. And if they can serve right, but I think that's why there's a balance. But there's a balance. As a conservative, your job is to really go off and protect the liberties of Americans as much as possible. And if you're a Democrat, it's your job to ensure justice for people as much as possible. And there's a coexistence of liberty and justice to create our republic, and this is why the United States is such a great country, and it's about the coexistence and intermingling of people with those types of ideals.
I like to be for justice. I'm for justice.
All right.
But a lot of people don't get justice. I don't like it when someone screams about the fact that they didn't get justice. There are a lot of us that don't get justice. I didn't get justice in my election. I know a lot of fathers who don't get justice when it comes to custody of their kids.
I agree. I think that's actually a big problem. And then the family separations with CPS are a lot greater than
there are a lot of people who don't get justice.
Too. Yeah.
And so I don't like to hear people whining and crying about justice.
Hey, point taken. I agree. I can't argue with that. Do you think we're going to be forced to get a COVID vaccine? What do you think is going to happen when the vaccine rolls out?
Based on what Trump has said, that he's not going to make the vaccines mandatory, I pray that that's true. I will never, over my dead body, I will never get a vaccine, a COVID vaccine. I just won't.
And then that's why another reason why we need to be organized and organize sit-ins and stuff like that, because I don't think that you should be. I don't believe in forced vaccinations. I think that you should vaccinate according to what your preferences are, and you should read and go by the facts and do what you think is right for your child and other people's kids. But I don't think that you should be forced to do something by the hand of the government, because then it compromises public health and safety in a big way.
I think there's enough pushback in this country that a vaccine will never be mandatory.
I agree.
I do.
I'm glad we're on the same page about that, because a lot of people are very afraid and fearful about that. So I'm glad we're on the same page.
I think that they may. Unfortunately, I think they might use it though. Like, what if you have to get a vaccine in order to get on this plane or to go to this college? I mean, I think they could make it very uncomfortable.
I could see that. But then just show that you have antibodies, right? And then you should be able to fight that.
I think we're going to have to push back.
Yeah, there's going to be some pushback, and there's got to be a middle ground. And I also think that, you get exposed to a lot of T cells once you get the virus, even the people you're around. So by the time the vaccine does get rolled out, enough people may have already had the virus, symptomatic or not, where you only need to vaccinate maybe 10 or 20% of the population. And I think that 10 or 20% of the population will probably voluntarily take that vaccine.
I think if you want the vaccine, then you should have it. But I think it should be informed. Like, make sure that you know what's in it, and you know, what the consequences of taking it might be, and what the, it might not be safe.
Do you see Justin Barry and these mainline Texas conservatives protecting your right to determine what goes in and out of your own body, Jennifer?
I don't trust anybody right now. I don't feel protected by anybody. I think that we're going to have to fight for our own freedoms, and we're going to have to fight for our own liberties. I mean, I really think a day is coming soon where we're going to have to fight for our own freedom individually.
Yeah, and I also think that when it comes to that, you got to include as many people as possible in that fight, regardless of what one person's political beliefs are.
Like my mom the other day, she's like, "What are y'all going to do for Thanksgiving? Like, are y'all going to go out of town? Are y'all going to travel?" And I said, "Mom, I'm not making any plans until November 3rd, because I think there is a day coming where we're going to be fighting for our person and our property. I really do. And I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist. We talked a lot about this before we started.
We did a little bit, yeah.
But I really think a day is coming. A different day is coming. I do.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you. So there's one last thing I want to talk to you about before we wrap up, because I think we've been talking for a really long time, and I've been thoroughly enjoying this. I'm really happy to have you as a guest, Jen. Like, it's good. I'm glad that you're sharing, and we're having a very good back and forth type of discussion about this stuff. What's your take on the Kinder Morgan pipeline?
I'm for it.
Because
I'm for it, and I know.
Because I know you work for an oil company, so I want to.
I do, And this pipeline will go from West Texas to the Gulf, is my understanding, and that there's been some pushback from environmentalists because of the warbler and the salmon or whatever. I don't know, but unless there's a threat of contamination to our, like, a water source for our own personal consumption, then I'm for. Texas is like one of the biggest economies in the world. And so we have to have all those things happening.
All right. So this is where we are disagreeing on.
I know, that's right.
This is because this is one of those things where I actually fought, and I was like partnering up with, like, not partnering up, but like canvassing with like super lefty groups to stop this pipeline from happening, because I'm not opposed to oil pipelines or energy or infrastructure. I understand that. I have a lot of friends who work in the oil fields. I understand how well those jobs pay. I also understand that if you're going to get a Green Deal, you better pay the people planting trees and building these rail systems at the same rate that you're going to pay the oil field workers. It's the only way this will ever work. But that
What's your concern? The warbler?
No, my concern is the fact that it's going through the hill country and it's going through our aquifers, and that pipeline could be going through the San Marcos River and the Blanco River, and I go fishing there, and we drink we drink our water from the Edwards Aquifer, and some of that could seep in. Another concern I have is eminent domain, and I don't think a private company, if you're a real conservative, I don't think a private company should be using eminent domain to build an infrastructure project on somebody's land if they don't agree to it. I also, if you look at the city councils and if you look at the backlash, it wasn't just a few environmentalists, Jennifer. It was almost everybody in the towns and the cities where this pipeline was going to go through. Nobody in San Marcos wants it. Nobody in Lockhart wants it. A lot of people in Blanco County don't want it. The people where that pipeline is going through do not want that pipeline.
If the people don't want it, then it shouldn't happen.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. They don't want it being built. And for like the cost of one day of doing business, they could literally just reroute that pipeline to a different community where the jobs would be more beneficial. And you're building a pipeline near like highways and nearing like a highly populated area, and if something actually happens to the pipeline, there could be a lot of problems. Like, I don't think it's a smart place to build that pipeline. That's my take on it. I don't mind if they build a pipeline through the Gulf through West Texas through the Gulf, just reroute it so it's not near a major water source.
Yeah. Well, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I think they must have presented their plan, though, to the courts, and the courts said that it was okay.
They gave them a big bribe, and there was an offer they couldn't refuse because people are compromised and they're not genuine or true to their principles. And fun fact, there was an injunction, and I think the judge who delayed the injunction or made it so that they expedited the process. Guess who appointed him, Jennifer? Obama appointed him. He was a Democrat. So that's where
you're not going to ever have to convince me that there's corruption.
Corruption, yeah. And then our city council talks so much about fighting climate change and sustainability. And what did our city council really do to actually bring awareness to this pipeline? They did next to nothing. So if you really care about climate change, if you really care about the environment, if you really are about sustainability and all this stuff, right? That should have been the forefront of the agenda. Like that's my take on it, Jen. I think I don't mind these projects. I think we need to have infrastructure and we need energy jobs, but I think that when it comes to where these jobs are being built, if the community, if the town is in widespread disagreement of that, if this is infringing upon somebody's property rights, if you're as a conservative, it's the most anti-American, anti-conservative thing to do, to just let a private company utilize eminent domain to build something on somebody's land. Like, imagine if they were trying to build a rail through there, you'd be up in arms, right?
I agree.
So it's the same thing. It's the same thing, Jen. I know that it's, even though it's within your field of work, maybe there might be a bias, but it's the same thing, and that's the long and short of it. And then Greg Abbott signed this thing into law where it's like a federal, a state offense, a state felony punished by 10 years in jail to protest these companies at the site.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, it's literally like, it's the most
I don't know if I saw a lot of property owners protesting. I saw environmentalists protesting.
No, I went to the state legislature and I was there. There were a lot of property owners that were upset about this and upset about the eminent domain stuff. There were a ton.
Okay.
A ton. And when I canvassed and did door-to-door stuff, I only did it for a few days. There were people with Confederate flags that were like, fuck this pipeline. So a lot of people were very angry about this. And even when I went to the rally that I saw you at on Saturday, I talked to a few conservatives about that, and they're like, yeah, we need Republicans that are actually going to care about your land, your rights as a landowner. You know what I mean? The same people that are pro Kinder Morgan are the same Republicans that are like enforcing mask wearing. So you should look at the correlation, Jen, when it comes to that. So there's
Hypocrisy.
there's a lot of hypocrisy.
All right.
I think we're good. There's one last thing. I'm sorry. There's a bonus question. So I know that you're very pro-choice on vaccines.
Anti-vaxxer.
Well, you're not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not going to call you that, but I know that you're very
I'm
strong.
an anti-vaxxer in
Are
that
you
I don't think they should be mandatory.
I don't think it should be mandatory.
Okay.
I don't think that they should be mandatory. But one of the things that I never understood is I feel like if you're going to be pro-choice on vaccinations, you should probably be pro-choice on somebody's reproductive rights. I don't understand how somebody could be pro-choice on one thing and not on the other, because I feel like there should be a consistency, even though you don't agree with it morally, because I don't agree with like abortion morally. I really don't think that the government should be that should be between you and God, is what I think. And I want to understand why there's a difference between that.
Why I'm pro-life?
No, not why you're pro-life, but like in terms of the government legislating, why, like, because there are a lot of conservatives that are saying, hey, it's okay for the government to like legislate, reproduct like the abortion and stuff, but they should not legislate vaccines. And then there's the liberals who say, you better give me all my abortion rights, and we want to do late-term abortions, but then they want mandatory vaccinations. It just seems inconsistent. Like if you're going to take a position, there should be consistency when you take a position, is my take. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Right. Well, I'm not pro-choice. I am pro-life.
That's fine.
And the reason I'm pro-life is because it's about life. It's not, to me, life is very different from a vaccine. And it kind of it feeds into my sex education advocacy, in that Planned Parenthood, who is the biggest provider of abortions, they also are the largest provider of sex education. And so it's a business model in which they are manipulating children's minds and changing the way that we think, or the way that kids think, where they make more risky choices, and then they also then make they're more likely to make a choice for abortion. And so,
or they're more likely to make a choice to get pregnant at a young age or something, maybe, or
they're more likely to make a choice to have sex, and unprotected sex, or to have sex, period. And then they're put in a position where they have to make an abortion decision, and that's a hard place for a young person to be in. And so it's a vicious business model and then Planned Parenthood is the second largest provider of gender transitioning hormones. So they're just a bad actor, and you can't trust them. And so I'm pro-life for a lot of different reasons, but I would say that the people that are involved in the abortion industry are involved in a lot of other industries, and they make that decision. They make that choice. They put that choice in a young person's life that shouldn't be there in the first place. Like,
sure.
we need to interrupt that business model way before an abortion decision.
Sure, but I'm also like, if you're going to be for limited government, that also wouldn't that like fall within the scope of just limited government and saying, hey, I don't agree with it, I think it's wrong, but like that the government should just be left out of it. They're just more pressing issues like lower taxes and your property rights and your vaccine choice and your right to carry a firearm and defend yourself against domestic terrorists or people who are assaulting you and stuff. I feel like those are just, when it comes to like the priority pyramid, I just feel like it's very low on the priority pyramid for what we're dealing with, though.
It's not low, but I agree that we shouldn't force women to make decisions, but we're manipulating those decisions way earlier in that cycle.
Fine, I'll give you that. I think that's fair. What do you think about the stuff on the news about how Trump's like little Regeneron cocktail was like with the Board of Fee? I just want to know like what your take on that is, because
what?
Like Trump's little COVID Regeneron Gilead cocktail to help get better from the virus and make that recovery.
I don't care what they gave him. I'm glad he's better.
Right, but how do you feel about like stem cell treatments to help with illnesses and stuff?
I don't know what he got. I don't know what he got. I mean, I think he's been on hydrochloroquine probably for months, and so that's probably strengthened his ability to fight the virus. So I don't know what he got. I'm sure. I think he's a healthy man, and I think they've had him on things that have prepared him for it. So I think he's going to be fine.
I think he's going to be
He's
fine
gonna
too.
recover.
No, I think he's going to be fine too. I think the market's going to like boom afterwards. I think the narrative about COVID is going to change.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think it's all going to change. I'm just asking your perspective on some of that stuff, because I think that if you can, look, I support if you can use stem cells to help like cure illnesses or expedite certain recovery and healing processes, like
I don't know what he got. I don't know anything about that.
So you don't know? All right, that's fine. I just wanted to throw that out there. Anyway, Jen, I think we're wrapping up. I really appreciate you doing this. This was so much fun. Thank you for. I know I asked you some difficult questions and I put you on the spot about certain things, but I appreciate the fact that you were candid and honest to answer these questions and stick to your guns about how you feel. And like I said, there are a lot of things that we disagree on, but there are certain things that we do agree on. And I think one of the things about being somebody who's going to be involved in government is you want transparency and you want people to share how they feel and be open. And I think that's something that's very admirable. And I really appreciate that, Jen. So thank you for coming on.
Sure. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.